Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Backstage Bikini podcast with your hosts, Grace and Jade. And this week it's just us. It's just us. We're having a catch up. We've literally been waffling for like half an hour before we even got on the call. um, like that's pretty standard. So
Yeah.
I'm not even going to say this is going to be a short one because Grace and I we love a waffle. But we wanted to get on today because basically our DMs are always open. We speak to a lot of you. And one question in particular came in a couple of weeks back. It was a first time competitor, and she was asking about feedback in particular around her environment, around her sort of immediate vicinity, and what kind of feedback she was receiving while she was prepping. So Grace and I wanted to just sort of delve into the types of feedback that you're not likely to get. It's not a preconception or anything like that, but things that you might run into in relation to just experiencing and being a part of this environment and a part of this world, cult, whatever you want to call it. And just sort of dig into the things that we have experienced ourselves, talk about the impact it might have on you, whether you're in off season, whether you're in prep, and just raise some awareness. Right, Grace?
For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, we have a
Yeah.
platform to do
Yeah.
it, and I think it's a topic that we definitely need to touch on. We've had a briefly in other podcasts, but just one
Mhm.
solely dedicated to this because it is really, really common to get comments on prep and also chat about, body image on
Yeah.
prep, off prep,
Mhm.
because you might get negative comments from other people, but there's also a lot of negative things that you can say to yourself
Yeah.
that can make things really, really hard. And also, with it being summer and stuff like that, managing your body image that might be impacted throughout that
Mhm.
period of time and just chat about it all because it's something
Yeah.
I'm incredibly passionate about. And
Yeah.
people are
Mhm.
always asking us questions with regards to that. And we had a few coming in as well that we want to answer.
Mhm.
But yeah, I suppose like the biggest thing, like the first thing that I want to say on this, and every time I get these kind of questions coming in, I've even had males contact me with regards to this because they're doing photo shoots and they've had other men, their friends, commenting
Mhm.
negatively on it. The first thing I always say is like, what we're doing, you guys listening to this podcast,
Mhm.
even just people going to the gym, changing your physique, photo shoots, whatever, it's so different to what other people are doing. And I
Yeah.
think when you're in this bubble of it all, you think that everybody's doing it, when actually, in
Mhm.
fact, it is such a small percentage of the population that do
Yeah.
dedicate themselves to changing their physique.
Mhm.
And it's so foreign to other people what we're doing.
Yeah.
Why you would want to get bigger, why you would want to get really, really lean when maybe you're already in a very petite body. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, with females, why you'd want to grow your upper body, for the older generations, they might not understand it. Like it's very, very different for other people. And I think we need to remember that
Yeah.
although we
Yeah.
might be consuming things online and you have this community of people, maybe your friends are in the industry, whatever it is, you're looking at other people online, most of the population are not doing this.
Yeah.
So that's what I always say is the first thing I say to other people is you have to understand where they're coming from if
Mhm.
there are comments coming in because it's just so
Yeah.
far to them.
Yeah. And
Um,
yeah, I think acknowledging that we are a 1%. Like, I mean, I've done it. I remember my first prep, and I was quite isolated to the actual community of like bodybuilding. So it was almost like I felt like outside of bodybuilding, trying to get in, but that works in reverse as well. So you have to be aware and acknowledge that what you're doing is probably wild to somebody else. They won't understand your rationale. They won't understand why you want to do it. They won't understand. A lot of it can be, well, not a lot of it, but some of it can be envious as well. Like, what you've got to remember as well is you're potentially doing something that somebody is absolutely desperate to have the discipline, absolutely desperate to have the answers and the willpower and the things like that to execute themselves. So it can bring out, I want to say, sort of a bit of animosity sometimes in those respects as well. People might not necessarily understand why you have to go to the 10th degree that like we do. They might think that it's perfectly normal for you to stop at a certain point because that's what everybody else does. People may assume that you're ill, you have a sickness, it's an eating disorder of a kind. So I think having that awareness that the outside world are not going to get it. If
yeah,
they haven't done it, or they haven't been exposed to it. So somebody might not have competed before, but they might have known somebody that competes. Like I've got a work colleague, for example, that knows her PT's competed and she's seen the process before. So she has a different viewpoint automatically because she's observed it before, even though she categorically says she can't go without a beer and she wouldn't do it herself. But there's people that may have been exposed to it in different fashions that will have that level of understanding that will make it easier, but you have to assume that 99% of
Yeah,
people haven't got that.
that's
Yeah.
literally that's it.
Mm.
Yeah, and there's an element I do say that you do need to educate other people as well as to why you're
Yeah.
doing it,
Yeah.
and how, even tracking my fitness pal still gets a bad reputation.
Right. Yeah,
That
of
it's
course it does.
like you have an eating disorder or whatever it is, and there's all these
Mhm.
things online. In that sense, I do think it is your job to still be able to educate people why
Mhm.
you're doing that. Same with
Yeah.
going to the gym.
Mhm.
People think that, building your body and being so focused on the physical is such a negative, but tell them all of the positives that it's
Yeah.
also bringing you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
not just with your confidence, but even just your health. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I will hold my hands up. I'm sure I've said it on other podcasts, but my family for ages and still even now, my mum struggles to understand why I want to go to the gym and build my legs.
Mhm.
And although I say like the aesthetic, I still want to look good. I tell her that for my overall health long term with my bones,
Mhm. Yep.
preventing all of these things, my heart health, why I do all of
Mhm.
it. And then they'll sit there and be like, oh, okay. Because they only see a snapshot. They might think, oh, you're doing it for validation or you're doing it because you have an
Yes.
unhealthy relationship with your body
Yeah.
or your masculine and eating disorder. But tell them,
Yeah.
okay, why the positives of why you're doing it as well. Like
Yeah.
I do think there's an element of responsibility on you to do that.
Completely agree. I think as well, it's the way you communicate that as well. Because I've been in situations in workplaces where I think when you're in specifically in a prep, I think prep is visually very distorted in terms of the average person and what they look like. So you are going to stick out like a sore thumb, regardless, because you are doing something extreme, and that is an extreme sort of condition for your body to be in, and it's visual. People can see it. I think not to generalize too much, but we know that diet cultures exist. We know that sort of body positivity exists and things like that. We know the other ends of the spectrum in terms of what society are kind of used to seeing. But I think that lean body on a woman, especially, is not something that we're accustomed to sort of viewing. But if you are ever approached with any comments specifically around your prep body, about you being too lean, maybe being too conditioned, looking emaciated. My mum tells me that I look like I need feeding. But ultimately it's about how you respond. I think if you come from a defensive place, if you come from a place where you feel defensive of your own choices, that can come across in a way that people think, oh, well, you're just saying it because I've challenged you on it almost. Whereas if you come from a place of passion, like they might not get it, they might not resonate with that passion, but I think passion is much more transferable in terms of conversing and getting somebody else to see your point of view. If you're talking about how much, for example, how much you benefit from sort of challenging yourself to that degree, what kind of discipline you've been able to not only apply to the sport, but transfer into other areas of your life and what it's bringing to you, do that rather than saying it's got nothing to do with you, or like, don't make a comment about my body, like coming from a defensive place rather than coming from a place where you're explaining to somebody why this matters to you, even though it's really obscure. That
Mhm.
can change the dialogue massively, because I've had two very conflicting conversations and that's the only thing I ever changed.
Yes, yeah, no, I agree. And when I started out my journey, I did get very, very defensive because it meant a lot to me. And the
Yeah.
more I did it, then the more I was able to, just speak more calmly about it. And I remember um on prep, my mum had made so many comments about the vascularity side of
Yeah.
things because it was
Yeah.
just really, really unhealthy. And the one thing that kind of got me through that was letting her know that, okay, right, this does look unhealthy. I 100% get that. But
Mhm.
for this period of time, that's the poison that I've chosen to pick.
Yeah.
And they look at that and think this is really, really unhealthy. But the
Mhm.
reality is there's a lot of other unhealthy things that people in their 20s and their 30s are doing.
Yeah.
And if you were not going to the gym, or if you didn't have a go, there'd be comments on that. If you were drinking every weekend, if you were doing drugs every weekend, there'd be comments on that.
Mhm.
And your family will be worried regardless of
Yeah.
whether like you do.
Mhm.
And if you've picked that as your poison, should we say,
Mhm.
yeah, they're going to have comments on it. So what always got me through was saying to my mum, look, I don't drink every weekend. I'm not off doing these crazy things.
Mhm.
Yes, I know it's unhealthy, but it's for a short period of time. I'm aware
Yeah.
of all of the things that it's
Mhm.
doing. I'm aware of the impact that it might have on my energy levels, on my hormones. I've educated myself. I always assured her that I had the best coaches in my corner and that I knew what I was
Mhm.
doing. And this is the poison that have chosen as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it's just like, and I don't like to say, oh, you're comparing it to other people, but that's the reality of it, is that
Mm.
you
Mm.
are, yes, you're doing something unhealthy, but it's not another direction of unhealthiness, if that makes sense.
There's yeah, you're right though. It's a vice at the end of the day. You pick your vices. Like it's for me as well. My parents have always been quite. I'll always remember a comment that my dad made, and it was my first ever prep, and I was sat on the couch, and I still lived at home at the time, and he was like, "Jade, it's like you look incredible." He said the discipline is phenomenal, but I do wish you were out trying to find a boyfriend instead of doing this to yourself. And I was like,
Uh,
I
I
think so.
know.
I entirely thinks I'm never going to have children. But the reality of it is as well, like you have to appreciate that 90% of these comments as well, and we'll go into the ones that don't necessarily come from this place, but a lot of the comments you're going to get are out of concern primarily. They are. And I think if you, like you said, Grace, if you can educate yourself, if you can reassure people that it is an acute period of time. I mean, if they're flagging the fact that you've been competing for 9 months as a natural athlete and you haven't had any body fat on your frame for like 3/4 of the year, then fair enough. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
something that potentially you should be paying attention to. But the prep experience itself, the prep period itself, realistically, somebody's only going to be kept in a sort of extremely sort of lean state for an acute amount of time over the year. You explain that you understand the implications on your body. You explain the implications that it could have on your health. But like you said, you've got professionals around you. You are aware. You're making decisions. But then acknowledge their concern.
Yeah.
Give
Yeah.
them the validation of being concerned, because it is a concerning look. Like my mum tells me that I look like a skeleton, and I do. I do,
Yeah, I
you
know.
know.
Yeah.
It
Like they're
you have
not, they're
to
not,
validate
they're not
concern.
wrong. But like you said, it's how
No,
you
no.
respond to it. And I think you have to have, I always say, massive respect for your family when they do raise these concerns, because they've never seen you like that before.
No,
You
no.
know, they would have seen you growing up and, whatever normal body fat level, and now you're just like still emaciated. They've never
Yeah,
seen, like, of course they're going to be a little bit concerned.
yeah,
So I don't
yeah,
think, there needs to be respect there for how they feel too. And
yeah,
ultimately, yeah, it does come down to how you respond to that.
yeah,
And like I
yeah.
said, let them know that you're educated and all that good stuff as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just covering all bases and just being aware of people other than yourself. Like prep can be quite isolating in terms of like your focus is solely yourself. It's arguable that it is probably one of the most selfish things you'll do,
Mhm.
but with that selfishness in terms of focusing on your own goals and being hyper focused on like a prep or whatever it may be, personal like physique development, whatever, with that you have to look outside. You have to look at how the ink spills, basically. Like it's ink in water, it is going to spread, it's going to spill. How far that pours up is entirely down to you.
Mhm.
Entirely down to you. You have control over how that spills out onto other people, whether it be your actions, your reactions.
Mhm.
You have to consider other people's positions as well as your own, because you might be doing this to yourself, but you'd be naive to expect that not to pour out, because it is going to, unless you're going to lock yourself in a room and do it all by yourself with nobody around you, which would be an incredibly lonely thing to do.
I
Yeah.
know. No, I
Mm.
agree. The family thing is big for me, but I guess, like, if you're getting, another thing that always comes up is like comments from people in the workplace.
Yeah.
I know we touched on it before, and I'll never forget my first prep. I was working in a 9 to 5, and
Mm.
I did, when I started the job, I was at a healthy body competition, I was in my off season, and they saw
Mm.
me progressively get leaner. And I did get very, very lean. It was my first prep. I didn't have enough muscle
Yeah.
to kind of look somewhat healthy. and
Mm.
my work clothes were a lot looser. I was fatigued in work. Like I did look very, very unwell. And they'd be
Yeah.
saying things like, oh, like just have the cookie. Why can't you do this? And
Mhm.
I used to get really in my head about it. And
Yeah.
then I thought again, going back to like they don't get it. They're not like if you're
Mm.
working in a 9 to 5, they're not in the industry. Do you know?
No.
They might not follow you on Instagram, they might not care, but they're
Mhm.
looking at this and it's a concerning thing. And especially if you're like so fatigued and so tired, you're not functioning in work, you're not able to fulfill your job role, of course.
Basic.
And if you say it,
Yeah.
you're like, oh my God. And that's something that I found as well. And also when there's food around and you're
Yeah.
not eating it, a big thing that you said that they there, Jade, was the jealousy aspect. And I
Yes.
noticed that when I worked in the office environment was
Mhm.
people struggle a lot to say no to the donuts and the cookies and
Yep.
all the free shit that comes in, and you're
Mhm.
there on a prep with your Tupperware and you're not eating those things. Of course, they're going to sit there and they
Yeah.
might be in a much, much heavier body composition than you.
Mhm.
They might not even go to the gym, they might not even do cardio, and you're there, they're already probably looking at you as body goals, and then you're just getting smaller and smaller and smaller
Yeah.
and doing those things and making those decisions. Of course, they're going to sit there and feel really, really terrible about themselves, being
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
why I don't have that discipline,
Mhm.
like, and that might project as negative
Yeah.
comments then towards you
Yes.
because they're
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
jealous.
It
It-
exasperates.
yeah,
It exasperates those feelings. Like, you've got to think of people and individuals as, like, you're not there to reflect those, but sometimes you can act as a bit of a mirror, especially in this sport. You can expose people's weaknesses. You can expose people's lack of discipline, lack of arguably self-respect. I don't want to go that hard, but ultimately taking care of yourself, your body, your space, like your relationships, all of that is a form of self-respect. So it will shine a light on people's inadequacies in that respect for themselves. Like, it's not for a moment that we're saying that you're literally going in and saying, well, you can't do it and I can. You're
yeah.
not going to take
You're
that
so in
position.
your own
Like,
bubble. You're actually not really
yeah,
thinking of other people.
you're not aware.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that inevitably may arise. It may arise, and I think if you are aware of it, or if you find comments coming from a certain person and you can observe their sort of behavior, their position, what they do, what their characteristics are, their habits. If you observe that, I think the easiest thing to do as well is just sort of, I'm saying easy lightly. It's difficult, and obviously you're under a lot of stress and you're tired and fatigued and things, but you have to remember that that person's projection is from them. It's something that's wrong inside them. Don't ever feel like you're in a position where you have to justify what you're doing to make somebody else feel better
Yeah.
about their position. You're doing this for your own reasons. Everybody has a why. You are moving from that why, that internal reason as to why you're actually doing this for yourself. Don't ever feel challenged or ever feel responsible, because I've had that before, where somebody I was living with accused my prep of being a triggering behavior for her eating disorder. So
Mm.
there's other things like that, like it can go the other way. I've had that twice actually, where I've been held responsible for my actions and my ultimately control over that situation, because it is an element of control. You're controlling your body as it comes down and as it comes back up. And the fact that I was able to do that, and this person wasn't allowed to starve themselves for months and weeks on end, and they got hauled into hospital and refed and things
Yeah.
like that, or the eating habits were sort of scrutinized by people that cared about them.
Yeah.
Because I was allowed to do it, it was authorized.
Yours is being celebrated. It's a different thing. And it's
Exactly.
really hard
Exactly.
for somebody
Yeah.
to witness that.
Yeah,
I get it.
exactly. But it's having that awareness. Like, at the time, obviously, I mean, no word of a lie, I used to eat meals in my bedroom, just to, because I was consciously aware of the impact it might be having, because I can appreciate why. Did I have to change my behavior? Should you have to? Arguably not. No, because everybody has different eating habits. I could say that her eating McDonald's would trigger me, like, it's about having that self-awareness about what is going to protect not only that person, but primarily yourself,
Yeah, correct.
because it's a lot of guilt to carry. It's a lot of ridicule to sort of be subject to.
Yeah.
Are you prepared to put yourself in that position? Act accordingly. But those things are going to arise because you can't control what other people
No, no, no,
are
no.
doing or how they behave or what impacts them. You can't control that. All you can do is control, like I said, where the ink flows. So yeah,
As
it's
a
interesting.
coach, like as a coach, I remember being in that position, and it actually taught me a lot, like I said, about human behavior, and going back to what we said about being telling people what the positives are. When I was in that position of people being like, "Oh, Grace, why don't you eat the pizza? Or why don't you have the cookie? Or you look like," I can't remember, like the word cookie, people telling me to eat the cookie happened so many times when I worked in that. And I love cookies. Like, don't get me wrong. I'd actually say to them, I love them. Like, I love sweet things. I have such a sweet tooth, but I have this goal that I want to do, and I can have all of the
Mm,
cookies after if I
yeah,
want them. And I'd also say all of the positives of making the decision that I want to. Like, I would say I really, really like my meals, because I do. I
yeah.
genuinely do. And I would say these meals are fueling me for my training session. A
Mhm.
cookie will not fuel me for my training session. Do you know the kind of
Yeah,
way?
yeah.
This will make me sleep better. And I would say all of the things. And that's not like taking away that, okay, right,
I
I'm
would love a cookie.
sacrificing. So I'm trying to like not get mixed up
Mhm.
here, but like just saying that there is positives to that. And that's not to
Yeah,
say that other people should be as strict as you, but I think
no.
there's elements of what we do in the life that we live that should inspire people as well, and say, okay, right,
Yeah,
maybe I should have a little bit of self-control in the office. Maybe I should say
yeah.
no. Maybe I'd actually, maybe I should bring in my own Tupperware and prep all of these things. It's not
Mhm.
to say you should be
Yeah,
as strict as a competitor,
no.
but take little bits of it. And that's what I always tried to do when I was working at the job. I never took it on too negatively, but thought, how can I actually inspire somebody to
Yeah.
pick up a similar habit? And that was maybe just like the coaching in me that kind of
Mhm.
came out and being like, you would feel really, really good. And I know there's probably people in that job that I did inspire with those
Yeah,
habits as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
Going
yeah.
to the gym and like I said, having all of that discipline and being more body
Mhm.
conscious. And one of my managers from that job actually was working with me for my photo shoot this year as a client, and she
Oh,
lost an incredible
brilliant.
amount of weight. And I still
Mm,
have people messaging me
yeah,
then being like,
yeah.
I actually had a couple of people from that job that were just really, really inspired by that and that followed me on
Mm,
Instagram. So although we say like, yes, there's people that might take it really, really negatively and bring out those emotions, there's also people that they might feel a certain way about it, but I think in the long run, the more they understand, they'll actually eventually probably be inspired by what you do
yeah,
and take on little bits and bobs, if that makes
yeah.
sense.
I think the length of time you spend at work as well, like if you think about the exposure that they're going to get to you actually prepping, it's probably more than most, really. Like if you think about the way that your day, if you work a 9 to 5, if you think about the large proportion of your day that's going to be spent at work, they're probably going to have the most exposure to it as well. So if you are positive in terms of how you communicate it
Yeah.
and you show them that yes, it's challenging, yes, you may suffer in elements, but ultimately it's for an overriding goal of self-discipline and self sort of control and that sort of that sense of achievement. And I think it's that bit as well. I think explaining the goal as well always helps,
Yeah.
because I used to get asked all the time, well, what do you win? Do you win money? Do you win, like, are you going to be a
Like,
professional? I
oh,
was like, oh, money, I spend more. I
yeah.
spend more than I earn.
That's probably the hardest part, because you're like, you can't really justify it. Like, no, I'm
Honestly,
not a pro, but I'd say I travel as well and be like, yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
honestly, it's when they ask me whether I win anything, and I'm like,
Yeah.
a
Tiny trophy.
medal if I'm lucky, like if I do all right and if I
Yeah.
don't come up against people. And I think that's where, again, though, that's where people are like, geez, you must really like this. You
Yeah.
must really get a lot from it. Because again, like the the achievement itself is so internalized. You don't get a big wad of cash. You don't get propelled into the pro league, if only. Um, at the end of the day, that satisfaction that you're getting, people realize damn fast when you're not actually getting anything other than a medal or if like, I don't know, a rusty trophy that I've got from 2019. Like it's an internal achievement, and I think people start to resonate with that a lot more than if you told them that you won like a couple of grand or something like that, a couple of £100.
Yeah.
It just feed into a perception that it's all about the way you look and just sort of celebrating that physique, as opposed to actually this person's suffering for no money at the end. What on earth is wrong with them? Like
I
it
think
gives that added layer of perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do think people eventually will see the
Yeah.
positives.
Yeah.
Maybe not at the start, but they will eventually. Going back to family, like my dad always said, like, I'll never understand why you competed, why you put your body through that. I'll never say I
Mm.
like it, but one thing I will admire you for is your discipline and
Yeah.
something that you will be able to apply to anything in your life. And he's even
Mhm.
commended me, like, till this very day on how
Mhm.
those things have helped me and what I'm doing now as I navigate
Yeah.
through life is that I have that willpower, I have that drive, I have that self-control, you
Mhm.
know, that all of those things that are positives you take into everyday life. And people will see that. People be like,
Yeah.
okay, right, she's that 1% of the population that can do that. So
Mhm.
when you can apply that to everyday life, like they're all
Yeah.
huge positives that people
Mhm.
will probably see in time, as you
Yeah.
navigate through your journey.
Yeah,
That's,
100%. I think that kind of tenacity just doesn't go away.
yeah,
It doesn't go away once you've proven yourself, like, it's such a huge goal, and I think it is so challenging mentally, physically, emotionally. It just is challenging. And I think the self confidence, the self esteem you gain, will go into like the body image and things and the impact that might have. But from an internal standpoint, in terms of setting yourself a goal, executing every single day, everything that you could possibly control and were responsible for to reach that point, that achievement all by itself is actually giving me goosebumps. It's massive. It's
yeah,
massive. And there's no questioning at all that this sport can really help you develop and grow as a person, apply that skill set, strengthen those skill sets, make them transferable, make them a part of who you are. And I think taking that message through to people will help massively in managing any feedback you get.
yeah,
Like, no matter where it's from, tell them what it's taught you, tell them what you are gaining from it from an intrinsic standpoint, not just an external. Because
yeah.
the fact of the matter is, I remember looking at myself for my first prep. I looked in the mirror, I was like, nobody's ever going to want to see this naked. Like, nah, no,
No, I don't even
like,
want to
it's
see
just
myself
not
anymore.
nice. That's what I mean.
The
It
thing is,
doesn't get
like,
any
I think
better.
people think that you're not aware of it. This is the thing.
Yeah.
Is I would tell people like, I know I'm unhealthy. I know this is
Yeah.
not attractive.
Yeah.
Like this
Yeah.
is for a purpose. This is for
Mhm.
state. It's not for everyday life. Do you know? And I
No.
tell people that like you're very aware of what you look like and how abnormal
Mm.
it actually is.
Yeah. So
But
we've actually led quite nicely into body image really there. Body image, I
one thing
really
I did want to actually touch on, which I thought was a very good point,
yeah,
just to go back to the body comments thing.
yeah.
You are also getting judged on stage. So that's a big one. And I
Yeah.
think like it's teaching you things of how to like handle, like, yes, you're getting judged by other people that don't get it, but you're also getting judged by people when you're on stage. You have to be willing to take on criticism.
Criticism, yeah, 100%.
So that was just one thing that kind of came to mind because it is preparing you when you're on stage to be getting comments from
Thick
people and
skin.
also online as well. Like people are going to be
Mhm,
saying stuff and like, oh my God, just see her check and just see she doesn't have a tie in yet, or just see how her waist is, or
mhm,
do you know the kind of
mhm.
people are
Yeah,
saying things about your body
yeah.
when you're in this sport, they're going to be commenting on it. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, you've gotta develop a thick skin
Yeah.
in this sport. If you're gonna last any longer than 2 minutes, it's not for the faint-hearted in that respect. You've gotta have a relatively strong foundation in terms of who you are, where you gain your value from internally, and if the, external impacts the internal too much, you will find out pretty fast.
Correct.
Pretty fast, and I mean, it's gonna happen probably to 90% of us anyway, straight away, like, it is a difficult thing to manage, but again, it's that foundation, that skill set that you build, you get more resilient over time, but yeah, it's a difficult one, especially I mean, people are picking your body apart, like, let's face it.
I know, but that's what we get into when it's so
Mm,
physique driven. Like I said, you
mm,
might never have had that before. You might have had a totally different
no.
background, and then all of a sudden, everything's on your body. So you need to be aware of the negatives that can come with that. So
Yeah,
yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
but,
Um,
the body image one, it does lead us nicely, really,
yeah,
just about should we talk internal more first rather than external? Because 'Cause we've covered external a little bit, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
internally as well, though, those shifts in terms of like if we're talking prep versus off season, and even in prep as well. Like I mean, I'm in prep at the moment, and I find
Yeah, we're
a lot
we're
of
both very different journeys. I think it's good to hear how you feel on prep about your
both,
body, and especially
yeah,
you going on holidays on Wednesday, like how you feel about
literally, yeah. I think weirdly, it's probably the leanest I've ever been on holiday. like as in like physique wise. Um, I'm going away with a lot of people that are in a similar situation, like same community, other clients and things like that. So in terms of my immediate environment, it's not going to be very different at all. But externally, it's weird. The best way I can describe it at the moment, like for me in prep, sometimes I have periods where I'm looking at my body and I'm being that critical or comparative in terms of how I've previously shown up, that it's not necessarily that I don't see it, but I'm just I almost tell myself that I'm not going to look that good.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's almost like what you're seeing right now, or it's almost like taking your check-in pictures and having a look at your body and you stare at them that much that you actually find the fault and then you hate them. You go from being quite impressed by them to absolutely hating them within 5 minutes. And I'm not immune to that. You know, this is my fourth season. I'm not immune to that at all. And even getting into bikinis, my body's kind of lean, but it's not shredded.
Mm.
It's the leanest I've ever been in the context of me going away.
Yeah.
But because I'm in a prep, my viewpoint is I'm not lean yet.
Yeah, it's
So
good.
it's bizarre because typically if you were to give me this body in off season and say you're
Yeah,
going away on holiday, I would skip, run, hop,
yeah.
jump.
It's because
I'm
the
going away
journey is
with
so
multiple
different. Like the
competitors.
target is
Yeah.
already set.
Yep. Yeah.
No, so
And I'm
you
not there
look
yet.
at where you're at more critically and more negatively.
Yeah.
It's
And I'm
amazing.
not there yet. I'm not at the
Yeah.
target. So again, but it boils down to perception again. And I think I can catch myself in it now. I've done this often enough. I've done or frequently enough now. This is my fourth season. I know what it's like. I can look at myself and ironically, I've bought holiday clothes for like the evening and they fit really nice. So
Mm,
I'm happy as Larry in that respect. I'm like, no, I'm still filling out dresses. I don't look like a little boy. Like my arms aren't cut to bits. I'm not like I haven't got wriggly worms all down my arms. Like I'll look relatively normal in that setting. Put me in a bikini and all I see is my check-in pictures.
it's crazy. It's actually crazy how you would see yourself
Yeah.
in a normal person bikini
Yeah.
versus in a stage bikini, and you can
Yeah.
feel two very, very different things.
Yeah.
And that is all to do with the target. Because
Yes.
if you
Yeah.
were going on holidays, you would have been like, I'm there, I'm really, really happy
Mhm.
versus stage. And this is where me and you are very, very different, is because I have no target. So I've
Yes.
ultimately got to a place where I'm like, I'm happy, I can accept
Yeah.
this. That's fine. I've nowhere to go from
Mhm.
here. If I lose a little bit of weight, gain a little bit of weight, that's fine. But you have this set target and the standard
Target. Yeah.
you expect for yourself. And it's mad
Mhm.
how the mind works. And like, I suppose with you going away will be interesting because you're going to be seeing probably people that are leaner than you.
Yes.
Is you
Yeah.
see people on stage that will make you feel a certain way. But then
Mhm.
you might be walking down the beach in a bikini and you might see someone with a totally different body, and all of a sudden you feel so much better again.
So
So
the
it's
irony,
not just what you're wearing, but the people that you're actually surrounded by
yeah,
that impacts your body image.
yeah, 100%. The irony of that situation, I went to Australia, God, I think it was 10 years ago, could be 8, it's ages.
Yeah.
But I went to Australia and I remember feeling really uncomfortable in my body, even way before I ever got into bodybuilding. And I was so uncomfortable. And I walked down Surfers Paradise and I had this preconception that everybody on Surfers Paradise was absolutely ripped. Like they all surfed, they were all absolutely peeled and shredded, kind of like all of the like surfing adverts, or I can't even think of the brand now. I went into the shop as well where they sell all like the bikinis and things like that. I thought everybody's going to be ripped. Got there, complete polar opposite.
Yeah.
Like large ladies, larger, like like curvaceous ladies that are like absolutely loving life, walking up with arguably 80% less concern about their body than me.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm wandering up and I just thought, that's perspective. And it wasn't a comparison point. It wasn't a case of, oh, my body's smaller, therefore I'm in a better position. It was that lady is that comfortable and that content in her body. It's not impacting her. She's enjoying herself. She was with her family and she was obviously very in like the moment in terms of like enjoying her environment and just enjoying her holiday or whatever she was doing. And I'm bothered about like covering bits
Yeah,
of myself up. And I just thought, if somebody can stand there and be happy in their body, why can't I?
yeah,
And it
correct.
was such a huge, it was such a huge perspective shift for me in that moment. So I find I can apply that now, especially in bodybuilding. I'm going away with people that are going to be in peak week. They're months
Yeah,
ahead of me at this point. So it's just about applying that perspective. Like I said, you have to have that viewpoint. Yes, you've got a goal, but if there's weeks or months between you and that goal, then put yourself, contextualize the position
that's
you're in
it.
now,
That's it.
and look at where you're at as opposed to where you need to be.
Yeah, and I think that's why I've gotten to a place with my body image that is so much better now, is because I've removed that competing thing and I wasn't able to separate the two. So that when
Yeah.
I did step away from stage,
Hmm.
all I was thinking about was that body, and that was my normal for so long. I
Yeah.
wasn't able to take myself out of it, go on holidays and look at other bodies,
Mm.
compare it, because I was
Yeah.
still constantly thinking about that goal, about that target. And I think
Hmm.
that's where a lot of people do struggle, is they're not able to kind of contextualize that. They're
Yeah.
not able to have that kind of perception. It
Yeah.
just carries through. And
Yeah.
I think a really important thing to say is, like, when you see other bodies, it's not a case of like, oh, I look better than them, so
No,
I,
never.
you know what I mean? That's what's
Yeah.
lifting up. It's just the
Hmm.
perception thing.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Uh,
It was an acknowledgement of like, that's somebody who's very content and very comfortable in their body. And I was envious of it. I'll be
yeah.
straight. Like I was jealous of it because I thought I'm not like that. And this was way before bodybuilding.
Mhm.
Um, but I didn't have that freedom in myself
Yeah.
in order to not be primarily and over consumingly like concerned with the way I looked. Like that lady could have been like half my size. It wouldn't have mattered. You could visibly see that she wasn't concerned with her body. She was concerned with her family. She was concerned with like the fact that she was enjoying her day at the beach. I was concerned with whether like my cellulite was like jiggling when I was walking, and I was sat watching my legs in shorts thinking, oh my God, this is moving so much. Like
Mhm.
I wasn't present, she was. And it was such a that was the comparison. It was like, that is what I want.
Yeah. Yeah. That
That
is,
that mental clarity and freedom, that's what I want.
yeah. And she was probably looking at you physically thinking, oh, I wish I
Yeah.
looked, but you were looking at her and what she was doing. And I was in that position as well, more so with what people were wearing. I
Yeah.
just thought, I wish I could be able to wear that. And our
Mhm.
bodies might not have been all that different at all, but
No.
I, God, they have the confidence to
Mhm.
wear that bikini or the low cut
Yeah.
jeans or whatever it
Yeah.
was, or have their arms
Yeah.
out. That was a really, really big thing for me for so long.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I wish I had the confidence to just wear a sports bra in the gym. And
Mhm.
it's like, you can get to that place eventually
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
But in that moment, it's just it does feel like a lot. And I have so many people that message me, and even I threw up a question box the other day of people struggling with holidays as well. And and Charlie Pitstock also did a really, really good post. It's never anything to do with your body composition at
No,
all.
it's got nothing
It's
to do with it.
nothing to do with your body composition. It's all to
No.
do with your thoughts, because you might have the same body a year on, but just think totally different about it as well.
Yeah. And
Mm.
that internal dialogue, like I go as far as to say, I mean, it impacted me on my last reverse as well. So my last reverse went to plan for like 6 weeks and then all hell broke loose. And I personally felt like the reverse was quite aggressive as well. So I was thrust right up close to where my peak off season sort of position was in terms of intake at the time. And I was experiencing a lot of like edema, like water retention. My face, well, like was swollen. I was under an excessive amount of stress and my body really changed. And I remember walking into the gym at the time and somebody had sort of said, oh, like it looks like things are sort of settling down a little bit now. Like you could really see how like watery you were and how bloated you were. Because I was already aware of that, because I was already uncomfortable with that, that tipped me over the edge. That comment wasn't malicious. It wasn't about my body composition as such. It was just an observation that actually my body composition had improved over time because they'd noticed the swelling going down. So technically, it was actually quite a reassuring comment, but because of my mindset and my feelings about that, over the edge,
You know, yeah,
over the edge. And I think you have to be aware. Something that I've learned is you have to be aware of where you are, because it's not necessarily that that person might be saying something that's impactful or meant to be impactful in a negative way. But if you receive it negatively, that's because of where you are, not because of where they are.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
you have to check your emotions as well, because it might feel like an attack, but the likelihood is that attack's coming from in here.
Yeah, yeah. And it could be like you might get a comment immediately post show, for example,
Mhm.
um, of you gaining weight. Oh no, it looks like you've got a little bit of body fat. Immediately, you're probably thinking, oh my
Oh my
God,
God. Yeah.
I've gained so much weight. I've totally rebounded. My coach is going to say this, or everybody on Instagram is thinking this.
Yeah.
You might get that same comment
Hmm.
6, 10 months down the line. Your hormones are recovered. You're feeling so, so healthy. You've got energy in the gym. You're feeling all these
Yeah.
positives, and you're like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I am. I'm
Mm.
feeling really, really good. And then you're looking at yourself a lot better. I remember I used to dread the life coming back to my cheeks, like,
Yeah.
not having that skull face. And I always wanted the jawline and everything. And now I look back at those photos and I'm like I never again, and that's just because I'm so, you become more,
Yeah.
you're in a different position.
Yeah.
You kind of come full circle. And even with like your bum or something, you might be like, oh my God, I'm gaining so much body fat. But then you look and you're like, I don't want to have a flat pancake ass for that long again, and it's just where you're at in that point in time.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
go immediately post show, of course, those comments are going to hit so much harder. You
Yeah.
know,
They will. They
just
will.
little thing, you're dealing with all of the scary thoughts of gaining weight and what your coach might
Mhm.
think, and as I said, other people. But then down the line, you're just like, they don't bother you anymore. You're
Yeah.
like, yeah, I do have glutes now, and you're starting to feel more proud of all of these things.
Yeah. And more womanly. I think when the perspective like shifts and the goal shifts, like you said, it's it takes a minute for your body to catch up. And I think from a reverse standpoint as well, arguably, I could be wrong here, and this could be a little bit ambiguous, but the road into prep is very rarely as fast as the road out
Yeah, I agree.
in terms of the way your body changes. So your body is trickling. I'm on a 20-week prep, for example. 20 weeks to bring it down to that point. I won't take 20 weeks to get back up to that point. Potentially a little bit shorter. It could be a little bit longer, but in my experience anyway, I have never taken another 20 weeks to reverse back out to the same weight. It's probably happened within half the time. Arguably right or wrong, whatever. We're not touching on that, but it will feel more rapid
Okay.
as you're on your way out, because you are working psychologically. You had one goal one day and a completely different goal the next day. That adjustment period isn't going to happen in 24 hours. So therefore the impact of any weight gain on the way out is going to be compounded with the fact that you've had to completely switch your mindset overnight as well.
You're mourning something, and you're mourning a
Yeah.
version of yourself, you're mourning an
Mm.
identity. You've been
Yeah.
working towards that goal for so long, and then all of a sudden it's gone, and you're in a completely different body. And like you said, you're embracing that for 20 weeks as well, maybe even a little bit
Mhm.
longer if you're doing
Yeah.
shows. You're getting
Mhm.
all of the positive feedback and the dopamine rush, and then all of a sudden that stops. And you're
Yeah.
like say you're going in the other direction again. And that is so scary.
Yeah.
And the thoughts are really, really overwhelming. And I deal with my clients who, reverse out of shoots as well, and all of that kind of thing. But one thing I will say is every time you do it, it always gets easier because you know
Yeah.
what to expect. You catch
Yeah.
yourself out on those things. And your first prep, that first reverse is really, really difficult in that sense because, and we spoke about it before, doesn't it become the norm and you start to think that that body is the norm a little bit more?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's only when you do it time and time again and you see the future of like, okay, right, I know I need to build muscle. I know I need
Mhm.
to get to this healthy place, but you just have to do it first to know that
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
just as a positive outcome of that
Mhm.
journey as there is to your prep. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you go through your first prep, you can't see that. You can't
No.
look at positives,
No.
You might,
There's no reference
yes,
point.
I know I need to build muscle, but you haven't gone through that yet to
No.
feel the
No.
positives of it. And same with your hormones. All you
Mhm.
know is positives from prep and the
Yeah.
dopamine and everything that you brought in, you're
Yeah.
latching onto that. But I think
Mhm.
when you go through your first off season, you start hitting bigger lifts, you start to see your glutes getting bigger, whatever it is. The more you do, it gets easier because you're more excited then for
Mhm.
that next
Yeah.
step, especially if you're
100%.
not so far in the sport. I do think that the body image thoughts get a little bit easier because you're like, I know I have this goal. I know I need to make that progress. And
Yeah.
I see it a lot with I suppose people like Marnie, for example, people who have just
Yeah.
earned their pro card, they've
Mhm.
been doing this for so long
Mhm.
and they know that they need to progress. They know they need to do all these things with their hormones. So
Mhm.
it's nowhere near as bad. And you even see on their question box, they get asked these questions and they just say, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I do struggle, but it's always the hardest at the start of your journey.
Yeah,
Definitely.
100%, because there's no reference point. And I think the one thing as well that I will say on that is from a body image perspective, if this is the first time you've ever competed, it's the first time you've ever put your body in a position where you are that lean, where you're that conditioned, where your body fat is that low, you've probably never seen your body in that condition before, ever before. Like this is the first time you've ever reached that point. Therefore, on the way out, you now have a reference point that you didn't have before. So a body that you would have been perfectly happy with previous to that, so say it's another 5 kilo up from where you were, you're not going to view that body the same as you viewed your body before that prep. So I think it's important to understand that your reference point has just completely obliterated any happy place that you might have considered yourself to be comfortable in. There's going to be a period of where you have to acknowledge and accept that that body's not a permanent body, but then also appreciate it for what it was and what purpose it served, and then
Yes.
disconnect and remove and be like, yes, okay, I can get that lean, but is it necessary for me to get that lean to go to Ibiza? No, it's not. And disconnect that as being your ideal body. That is your body, that you are your very best version, I guess. You've got to weigh up the pros and cons of what comes with that body, and then disconnect from that being a new standard, because it's not a new standard. It's a new standard for your shows, it's a new standard for your prep, certainly not a new standard for your holiday or your day-to-day living. It can't be. Because that's something that I really observed after my first prep. I was like, oh
Well,
wow,
it's
okay, I've
not
never
a
been this tiny.
thinking and it's hard, nobody's saying you're going to go through it and to be easy. Like having those
Yeah.
thoughts is hard and trying to be able to rationalize them and face
Mhm.
them is hard. One thing, just because that point was really, really good. One thing that I did in after my first no, yeah, after my first prep was when we were going through lockdown. I was at my heaviest body composition ever.
Mhm.
There was no gyms, but I remember it was a week before starting prep and I was having really good body image. Like I felt
Mhm.
amazing and I was so happy to be in that place. And I
Mhm.
knew that, there was going to be struggles on a prep, but I had that really good body image moment. I remember I took a photo of myself in
Yeah.
like a little bikini. I don't know if you remember the
Yeah.
post, it was back in like
I
2021.
think I do actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember I took a photo and I looked at it and I was like, I'm going to post this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say all of the things that I love about my body here and how great I felt. And I'm going
Mhm.
to look back at this when I finish my prep and be like, Grace, you were happy in that body then. You were going to be happier when you go back to that. I've lost Jade. You're going to be happy when you're back when you go back
Don't
to
know
the
what happened.
body.
I went to go and look for the post. Don't mind me.
Um, so I remember I took that and
Yeah.
I would look at other photos that when I was in a really, really good body image place, and I thought, when I'm struggling again post show for
Mhm.
whatever reason, I'll look back at that, have that reference point, and be like, Grace, you felt good then. You're
Yeah.
going to be absolutely fine.
Yes. Yeah.
And
You
that
have
did
to.
actually get me through. I remember looking at it and I'd be like, oh my God, I remember how I felt then. I felt really, really good.
Mhm.
I'd be absolutely fine.
This is gonna be okay. Yeah, because,
Because
I
that sense,
mean,
that's what it was.
it has to, and I think the caution will sort of bleed into external and how that might influence you as well, because like we've already said, like in terms of the social media and the dopamine hit and everybody being interested in how lean you are, that drops off damn fast. If you haven't done a prep yet or you're in your first prep, there is a whole lot of hype on the way in and there's a whole lot of nothing on the way out. Unfortunately, that's just the way people are hardwired to feed in. It's just where the interest lies, because it is a bit freaky and people get nutty lean, so fine. But internally, that can not only, if you're feeling crap about yourself and invalidated and like you're doing something that's counterproductive, having an external feed where it completely disconnects altogether, so there's no encouragement on the way out, or alternatively you get feedback like, oh, Jade, you look a bit like bloated in your face, how's it going, how's your reverse, or has it gone a bit bad, like whatever the feedback may be. I think it's important to do what you did at that point and go back to yourself and go back to what's important to you in terms of your health, and what are your reasons why you're like sort of journeying out from that physique into a new physique. Look at what you're gaining. Look at what internally, externally, the opportunities you have. You've got no brain fog anymore. You can like socialize with people. Like look at what you're gaining as a result of recovering that body, because that's what it is. It's recovery ultimately. Like you've put your body through hell. And I think if you allow the external to feed in too heavily, especially if the internal's a little bit shaky, and it will be for 99% of us, like it's not an easy period at all. You really have to focus on the foundations of the internal view and the internal perspective that you have on your body and why you're doing this. Hone in on that, because the external will batter the hell out of it otherwise. Like it's like a Jenga block. Like you knock one out, the whole thing will come rattling down. And it's very easy because you're very susceptible to it at that point. You're very vulnerable. So even more so, not taking the internal out of it, but the internal is more important because of the external that could impact the internal. So you have to start there.
Yeah, I agree. I think a big focus needs to be placed on your performance. We
Yeah.
always say your performance, your bloods, getting your hormones back to that
Mm,
place, internal things, back
mm,
to just like meeting people, socializing, having energy day to day as well, being
mm,
able to function and just soaking up all of those positives, even like have a little diary for yourself and writing out all of the things, the good things that are coming from your body changing post show. One thing I will say, we probably touched on it before, but really try and be mindful of, posting throwbacks all the time and having those as the only photos that you have on your social media.
mm,
Because I just think the more you latch on to that version of you and only post that, the more you think that that's how other people think you look. And you're going to
yeah.
be in your head about, okay, right, I don't look like that.
Yeah.
So really, really, and that's something that I've learned, in social media is such a big part. I think I've spoken about on podcasts before
Mm,
about it and how much that impacts it. But just be mindful of the comparing to past
yeah.
self,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
future. Like I said, take those photos of when you're a little bit heavier, and that's what you're working towards as well, of
Yeah.
getting to that place. And
It's easy, isn't it? It's easy to fall into a prep hole. We've all done it. We all do it. And it's easy to appreciate that body, but don't forget to appreciate your normal body, your day-to-day body. That's the one that
really
functions for
imagine
you all
for
the time.
well, yeah, and
Yeah.
that's not to say you can't progress with your physique. I think people forget that, think that you're just going to go back to square one. You're always
Mm,
going to look better every off season.
yeah.
That should be a given, unless you're not training and you are genuinely eating poor.
Yeah.
But going back to you as a person and how you normally look like, and
Mm,
I even thought about this yesterday about like IFBB pros that I look up to, and like I love seeing them when they're in
mhm.
the off season as well. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
they do go back to a normal
Mhm.
body. Laura is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Hagen as well. They all go back to just normal bodies, a little bit more muscle, when we got better body composition just from time in the sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a normal body all the same, and they're
Yeah.
living life, they're doing all of those
Yeah.
things, and their body
Yeah.
is with those actions and those choices that they've made as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think you utilize, I mean, I know that the elite and I know that they're up there and I know that arguably they've got more flexibility. They can take their foot off the gas, blah, blah, blah. Can they though? They're at the top. There's always somebody chasing your tail. So, I mean, I remember the conversation with Maureen, and she takes like multiple months off before she even starts considering going back. I ran into her not long ago actually, and she was out in Asia just having a holiday. Well, she was volunteering at the time actually. Um, but just because they're the elite doesn't mean that they haven't learned the same lessons that you're learning now. Whether that be relating to their body image, whether it's exposure to certain situations, things that they've had to overcome. They are the same people. They've done all of the same things that you are having to do now. Use them as a reference point of how balanced your life could be. I know balance is a bad word in bodybuilding, but ultimately that's what it's about though. Like you
You know, and people are probably thinking, I can't have that similar balance. But the reality is you can, and I
yeah.
wholeheartedly believe from being in the sport for so long that the stress people carry in their off season of thinking that things need to be robotic and perfect all the time
Mhm.
actually does more damage.
Categorically, I've never
Yeah,
fell so hard. I've
yeah.
never felt so hard from where I fell.
More robotic you like the more
Mm.
preppy you try to make your off season, I just think it does more harm. Maybe
Yeah,
not your relationship with
couldn't
food,
agree more.
your maybe tendencies to like overeat
Yeah.
a little bit more, the stress that builds up
Mhm.
from training, the lack of even social contact, not being with other people. Like
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, maybe not physically. For me, I know it did. There was elements of it that did because I feel such guilt about going out to
It
eat.
was yeah, it was that
It
for
was
me.
impacting my body, but also internally, just you as a human, like we're kind of going off topic a little bit, but you're allowed,
Yeah. Yeah.
as humans, we need to have social contact. We need to be doing different things. We weren't meant to be robotic and in a prep bubble all
Mhm.
the time. Maybe there's a
No.
small percentage of people that can do it, but majority of us need to be able to live normal life, and that's healthy. And going
Yeah.
back to what we said, it's going to improve your body image as well when the more normal life you're going to be able to live in your off
Yeah.
season too. Yeah.
Yeah. I think psychologically as well, around body image, like to use a reference point, when I went out for off-plan meals, sort of the last time I competed or afterwards, when I was in that situation, I used to gain 2.5 kilo, 2 kilo. And I
Mm.
was challenged at the time, like, oh, we obviously haven't ate what you said you've ate, or you've obviously not conducted yourself the way that you're perceiving to. And I remember I've said it multiple times before on podcasts. I used to observe the menu and look at the menu and stress about it and stress about the impact it would have on my body in terms of checking in, weight fluctuations, and that psychological stress undoubtedly feeds into the impact it actually has on your body image. The water retention as a result of inflated cortisol and all the other things that are into play. Whereas comparatively this time I was eating 2 to 3 off-plan meals a day just to maintain my weight because I didn't care.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
didn't care.
Crazy. I
So
think that as well with my
yeah,
holidays. Like when
yeah.
I sometimes in my off season so strict with my meals, go out for an off plan, I'd stress, gain a couple of kilos, wondering why I couldn't lose weight. And I went on holiday a few weeks ago and I came back and I dropped a kilo, and I've been
Mhm.
dropping nearly a kilo every week since, because I haven't been stressing about it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's crazy when people what they think they need to do versus what they
Yeah,
can
that is what they yeah, yeah.
is
Yeah,
crazy.
the stress is a massive player, and from a body image standpoint as well, psychologically, if you're stressing about your body image, like, it's gonna impact everything, digestion, your body's ability to uptake that nutrition, whether it be an off plan or whether it be your usual planned meals. Water retention, your performance in the gym, the effect, like, how effective your recovery is and your sleep is, like, that is gonna impact everything when you're stressing about how your body might change if you have a donut.
Yeah. Yeah.
When the reality of it is, if that stress was reduced because you weren't as concerned about the impact on your body and how it might look or how it might transpire in a check-in, if you actually consume the donut and not didn't stress about it, the next day you might be a couple of 100 grams up as opposed to 2 kilos up.
Yeah.
So that's a consideration as well. Like, where are you putting your energy in terms of how you're managing, like, your feelings and things like that? Where are you putting your energy? Are you exasperating it? And I don't mean that to sound like critical, but are you adding to the problem
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Like, look at your actions, look at how you're internalizing it, and look at your thoughts and ask yourself, are you making this worse for yourself?
100%.
Yeah,
It's
because
funny
you can
because
do.
like I think you could be coming out of a prep, right? And say you're on 2000 calories and your body is
Mhm.
like, you freak out if your body gains a little bit. But then all of a sudden, like you said, Jade, you're deep in your off season, you're able to maintain on nearly 3000. What's the
Yeah,
difference? Like I
yeah,
said
exactly.
20 minutes ago, you've gotten to a point that you've been able to manage those thoughts better.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
You've
And
sat
that's
and then with
how
your
people
body, you're more comfortable in your body, you don't really care. You're like, okay, well, I've gained a little bit of weight now. Whereas previously you're freaking out about it.
yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
because you
it's
know
the
you've got to step on the
environment.
scale.
Oh,
Yeah.
said it's
Mhm.
where you're at
Yeah,
that impacts those thoughts. But yeah, interesting. Also
massively.
comparing it to men as well. Like how many
Mhm.
times do guys go out and like they don't have as much body image struggles as we do. They go out, they might drop a kilo from
Yeah.
and we'll be gaining a kilo and freaking out,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
and
I think
it's just totally like their like psyche is so different to ours.
I
Um,
think a lot of it's social, isn't it? And
yeah,
we can bleed into like one of the other topics we wanted to touch really like in terms of the social aspect of it and sort of male goals versus female goals were very contradictory. Men want to be as big as possible, women want to be as small as possible. And I think societal trends and like expectations and things like that play into that. So like we are going against the grain really as females. We're trying to gain muscle, we're getting incredibly lean. It's not the look that is otherwise the epitome of a female physique, really. It's not a beach body, it's way more extreme than that. So we're going against the grain in that respect in terms of how we are trying to develop our bodies and what that might look like to society and what they are used to. So an awareness around that as well, because it can be quite challenging. I saw something on somebody's story not long ago about just sort of being catcalled in the middle of the street because she had muscles, and she was like, oh, like, and she got quite a lot of attention for it because that was a decision that she made for herself to build her physique, and it's just wild, really, when you think about why would that even matter?
yeah.
But it does externally, and again, it's about creating that thick layer of skin
Mhm.
and being assured in your own choices and assured in your own reasons as to why you're doing what you're doing and not being impacted, hopefully not too far impacted when it comes to people making comment or passing comment. If you're a muscular woman, get used to it. We're all at it at this point.
And I think just own it. Like if you know deep down that this is the look that you like
Mhm,
competing aside, like even in your off season or whatever, like if you like the look of more round delts on a female, bigger glutes,
mhm,
even bigger quads. I know I always loved the idea of bigger legs. I didn't like
mhm,
the thigh gap thing. Like I know that was a
mhm.
trend for a while, but if you know deep down and it's like taking away the validation and all
Mhm,
of that might come from social media of looking a certain way or whatever, like if you genuinely love that look, own it.
mhm. Yeah,
People are going to say these things of why do you want to like build your legs? Why do you want bigger legs? Or
mhm.
guys are going to look at you, why do you want broader shoulders? You might have bigger arms than them. You might have bigger hips than them, you know? And I just think
Probably
like
does.
if
Yeah,
that's the look that you love, like
yeah,
other men are going to have their opinion because they're not in the sport. That might not be
yeah,
their goal, or that's just they don't like women that look like that. That's totally
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
They're not
yeah.
the
And it
people
doesn't have to
that
impact
you
you.
want to socialize, even if they're friends, they're not the people that you want to be with anyway.
No,
If
no.
they're like going to be like that, or even with men, they're not going to be people that you're with. But I always think that there's an element of like people are intimidated as well
Yeah,
by
yeah. Yeah.
strong women
Mhm,
and women
mhm,
have bigger legs that can go to the gym, and even there's probably an element of discipline. People are like, oh my God, like look at her able to do all that,
mhm,
or
mhm,
look at her able to squat that or pull this, and they
mhm.
can't do it. Going
Yes.
back to the food thing, like
Mhm.
people, I think guys like people exert these things in their opinions because they feel a certain way about themselves.
Yes.
And if
Yeah,
guys
yeah.
are maybe insecure in themselves, or anybody who comments your body, like it's going to come out like that.
Mhm.
They might not be able to go to the gym, they might not be able to grow a certain body part, or you're female and you're bigger than them, where you
Yeah.
have just like bigger arms, like that is intimidating. That's going to make people feel a certain
Yes.
way.
Yeah.
Um,
It can emasculate some people, and
yeah,
unfortunately, again, it goes back to the fact that it's a them problem, it's not a you problem. Like, you have to contextualize the impact that you're having on them. Like, because the reality of it is you're just doing your own thing, you're just doing you, you're doing something that you're passionate about, that you want to be doing. You're impacting them because of them. You're not impacting them because of the choices that you're making for yourself, because they're about yourself. But inevitably, you're always going to rub somebody up the wrong way, whether you're doing something right, something wrong. If you're too skinny, then you're not like curvaceous enough. If you don't have a great deal of muscle, you need to go and get some muscle in the right areas. If you have too much muscle, you're too much. Like,
you're
who
not going to
cares?
please, you're genuinely not going to please anybody, so you need to be able
No.
to please yourself.
Yeah.
And truthfully, this is something that I've worked on for a while, because I suppose going back to body image,
Mm.
when I was on holidays, I felt really weird about my body because it was so different, that I
Yeah.
didn't have a bigger upper body. I didn't see girls, even when I look at Love Island,
Hmm.
shamefully watch it, their bodies are very,
Me
very
too.
different to mine. And
Yeah.
they've got, they don't have traps. They don't have, wider delts or anything like that. And I look and I think, oh God, would I stand out like a sore thumb there? Like, should I really look like that? And I've all of these thoughts about how my body should look. And I work on this in therapy, like should versus
Yeah.
wants. But
Yeah.
I always think we should be doing this, or we should look a certain way, or how females should look, or what the guy thinks I should look like. But
Mhm.
ultimately, what do you want to look like?
Yeah. Yeah.
Social media removed, Instagram removed, stage removed of like that's what wins trophies, Love
Mhm.
Island of that's what gets the most views or most followers on Instagram, whatever it is. What is the body that you love? What is the
Mhm.
body that allows you to thrive, allows you to perform at your best?
Mhm.
That's the body that you should be in.
Yeah.
I think
100%.
we get very, very caught up in what other people are saying, what guys think. And I even spent a lot of time this year thinking, oh my God, what kind of body do guys like? Do actually,
Yeah.
if I'm dating people, do they like the look of quads? Do they like the fact I have round
Mhm.
delts? And I'd be having all of those things and trying to like change what I do for that. And then you come to realize that all that matters is how you think you look and what you
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. Because the irony of it is as well, what you pay attention to, somebody probably wouldn't even notice.
Yeah.
I used to hate my legs, hate them. And I remember my old flatmate made a comment once and she was like, I'd hate to have legs like yours. Now, if you'd have told that, if she'd have said that to 16-year-old me, I'd have been devastated. Absolutely devastated because I didn't like them. They were bulky, they were bigger than my friends. Everybody had the thigh gap. I didn't. I trained all of my life from being like sort of 3, 4 years old. So I had developed legs all through my childhood and I despised them because they were different.
Yeah.
Now it's a compliment. It's a damn compliment because I wouldn't want to look like everybody else. That's not the point. That's not why I invest the amount of time I invest in this sport and in training and why I enjoy what I do because of the challenge and because of the development and because of the physical and internal changes that it's brought about. So it again, it's perspective. Where are you? What environment are you in? Where are you happy? Where are you comfortable? Find that.
Mm.
Find that and go from there because the rest is water off a duck's back. Like she
Yeah.
said it to me, and I was like,
But
I
it's
I
like
love them.
you're never gonna look like somebody else. So you
No,
might as well just own the body that you're in and the strengths that
yeah,
you have and how
yeah,
you look and focus on what you want to look like. And I know we actually bring this up a lot in the show reviews. Like when it comes
mhm.
to bikini, you're never going to look like Maureen. You're never
No,
going
I love
you need to sculpt your physique the way you
mhm,
can, like to your best ability. And the same
yeah,
goes, if you're just training in the gym regularly, like people are always like, oh, I want a really, small waist, or I want this or
mhm.
want that. Sorry, you cannot change your structure and how your body wants to grow
It's
either.
genetic. Yeah,
So, and
yeah,
I look at people online, I think, oh my God, I wish I didn't have this, or I wish I didn't have that. These girls on Love Island, like, are a lot narrower than me, or somebody might have wider hips. Can't change
mhm.
that. Do you know
No,
the kind of way?
no,
So you might as
no.
well just embrace what you have and work with what you have.
Yeah, and
Right?
learn to accept it in a way. Like I think we're so even in bodybuilding as well, and even in the sort of environment that you're in when you're competing, it's expected almost that you get comfortable with criticizing yourself and that's fine. There's an element of it that's important. But then when it comes to appreciating yourself, nobody does that.
Yeah.
Nobody sits down and tells people what they like about themselves. They just say, "Oh, here's a check-in. I'm not quite there yet. I need more this, I need more that." And that's acceptable because that's okay. That's the nature of the sport. It's self-development and physique development. But nobody ever said that you couldn't sit down and be like, no, I'm really happy with this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Literally,
and it's
exactly. And I
but
actually I only said this on a check-in today, a
Mhm.
quote from the GOAT of the fitness industry got me into the gym, Christian Guzman. The quote from Alpha Elite is proud but never satisfied.
Yeah.
And we get so caught up in the never satisfied. You know,
Oh,
you've
100%.
got the stage go, never satisfied, never satisfied, never satisfied. You're in
Yeah.
your off season, need more muscle, never satisfied, never satisfied. I always say to my clients and myself, you need to stop and smell the roses and look
Yeah.
how far you've actually come and how
Yeah.
much your physique has changed. And going back to
Mhm.
the very, very first thing that we said was actually how good you do look in comparison to other people. Again, not shaming other people or putting other people down,
No,
but remembering
no.
that you are criticizing yourself so much. You're telling yourself you're so far away from where you are, but look at how far you've actually come and look
Yeah.
at how far ahead you are of other people of the game, that people wish they could be where you are. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
so you need to sit, smell the roses, appreciate where you are, and be
Mhm.
really, really proud of
Yeah,
that, whatever journey you might be on, competitive or
yeah.
not.
Yeah, it's not a badge of honor to be consciously, perpetually self-critical. You have to have that compassionate edge as well. You have to have that self-compassion, the self-awareness, and you have to be present. Like again, I'm saying you have to be, like it's something that you're just going to be all of a sudden. It's not. It'll take practice, but you the sooner you come to terms with the fact that this is a moving timeline and you're never going to be in the same place ever again.
Yep.
It's much like life. You're never going to get those days back. You're never going to get the time back. You're not going to be on stage for the first time ever again. Appreciate where you are when you're there.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're just going to spend the next 6 months or next 8 months looking at your body going, oh my God, I thought I was fat. And
Yeah. And it's crazy.
and you lose time. You lose time that you simply don't get back. And you're not promised tomorrow. The time that you've had is promised. It's there. It's been and gone. You don't get it back, but the memories are there. The things that you can sort of learn from it and gain from it are still there. You hold those, whereas tomorrow isn't. You don't know whether it's coming or not. So
Mm,
why are you so perpetually consumed with what you can achieve in time that you're not promised yet, when you had every opportunity to value the development and the progression and the all of the success that you've already had, because it is success no matter what. Like whether you came first or last, if you improved the last time you stepped on stage, you've won.
yeah.
So learn to value and hold those memories and make the most out of them, because they will be with you forever, versus propelling yourself into a future that you might not even get.
And how often, Jade, do you get to post show or 6 months post show and you look at the check-in and you'll be like, I looked great there, but at the time,
Damn,
I lied about it. Do you know that kind of
hated it.
thing? And you
Yeah,
just think, like, in that moment, you just want to go back in time and wish that you had those thoughts at the time
yeah,
and be like, I wish I appreciated that so much more.
yeah,
Like, yeah, of course, you're going to be self-critical. We get that. You know, you have to be
yeah.
your
You have to be to a degree. Yeah,
element of being like, I've done what I could here. I look great for this moment in time. I'll keep
yeah.
working. I'll keep dieting. I'll take on the calorie
Yeah.
drop the coach says. I'll do more cardio. But right now, for this moment in time, I'm happy with that. You
Yeah,
know?
and where I feel I should be.
Yeah.
Or even if you're not, I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
doing everything that you need to do. You're ticking all your boxes. You're doing your cardio. Your body might not be responding, but your body is still working for you. Appreciate that at the very least as well. Instead of being critical of like what it looks like or what other people perceive it to be or what they might be saying about it, or we'll come on to like the sort of sexualized nature as well of it, or like be in it. Be in
Yeah.
it as best you can. Like I said, it's not going to happen overnight.
I say you need to spell the roses with
Yeah.
it's not taking away
Mm.
from the work that you want to do and the goal that you want
Yeah,
to achieve. It's not saying
yeah.
that. It's just having
And
that
it's not arrogant either.
moment. You don't want to get to the end of the journey or, 6 months after and regret, like you
Yeah,
said, that time being taken away or your whole
yeah.
experience of your prep being ruined because you were in your head about
Mhm, mhm.
it the whole time.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
worth it. And if it comes to a regular fat loss phase as well with clients, sometimes if they spent that whole time being self-critical, they look back on that with such a negative emotion. The same can be with prep. Like you
yep.
just feel like, I hated every moment of that because
Yeah,
you're
and
so
that's where we lose people to
yeah,
the sport,
yeah,
that's where we lose
yeah.
people, and it's not I wouldn't go as far as to say it's self-inflicted. There's definitely things externally that can ruminate things like that. Like I said, it's like that quote itself, like it's very much expected that you have to be humble. You have to always be striving for better, and if you're complacent, you're failing, or if you're complacent, you're lazy and you're not committed. It's not about complacency, it's about acknowledging where you are on that any given day, what it's taken to get there, and having an appreciation for it. Like you said, it doesn't take away from the fact that you want to improve. It
Yeah.
doesn't.
Nobody's
It
saying
doesn't make you it
nobody's
doesn't
saying
make you arrogant.
fat
No.
loss goal or anything like that.
No. No.
I just think it makes the experience so much better.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just at that point in
Yeah.
time. And hold my
100%.
hand up. That's something I probably need to work on in my last prep. I didn't do
Mhm.
any of that, but I'm here
Yeah.
to tell. This is why I'm sitting on this podcast having the conversation because I've been through it.
No, but you know what? At the
No,
end
I
of the
will
day,
never
that's the
prep
whole
again, but I've
point.
been through
It's the
the
whole point.
lowest of the lows with my body
Mhm.
image, and I've
Mhm.
come out and I've learned so much about it to kind of
Yeah.
help other people and just to have people not in the same boat as me as well.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
my last prep, hold my hands up, I know we're rambling, but I hate every check-in. Hated it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
never, even when I stepped on stage, I'd get off stage and I'd cry. I came third at the Amateur Olympia in Italy, came off stage, still have the video in there, I'm crying. Do you know? And what is it the saying? Like one person
One person's shit is another man's
treasure.
potpourri, something like
Yeah,
that.
something like that. Another person
Mine's
like
definitely an
absolute
English one.
treasure. Yeah, it was something like that. But in that moment, I was like, I'm shit. I'm absolutely shit, you know? And
Mm,
I couldn't have that perspective being like, look how great I looked up there. I couldn't,
yeah.
there was not one positive moment I was able to get from that practice. I was so in my head. I was so negative about
Mm,
how I looked. And that's why I suffered so much afterwards as well, as I couldn't
mm,
get out of that mindset.
mm.
But look, like I said, here to tell the tale.
Yeah, no, but you came out the other end, and I think
Yeah,
that's the
yeah, yeah,
important thing as well. Like we're sitting here with multiple seasons under our belt, very different experiences, very different sort of exposure to challenges and things like that. But that's the point. That's the point. You sometimes I firmly believe this. And I remember observing comments about people's posing and them like sort of skippering it up one show. I think it was a first timer show or it was a first timers category and people were getting the poses wrong. And I remember seeing comments around criticizing these athletes for it. There is an element of life and an element of bodybuilding, no matter what situation you come into contact with, you're gonna have to fail at some point.
yeah,
You're gonna have to. You're gonna have to suffer with your body image. You're gonna have to suffer with overeating. You're gonna have to suffer with feedback from people. You're gonna be challenged by it. You're not gonna respond the right way. You are gonna be put in situations where your back's up against the wall and you're barking and trying to make people understand. You're gonna fall out with people. Why? Because you're gonna learn how to manage it better next time.
yeah. I
It's the whole
wholeheartedly,
point.
you have to.
Whole
You have
point.
to. And, like, I think that's a life thing as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people try and avoid these things, or they're scared of them, or they might not prep because of all of that, but it's
Mhm.
part of it. It's
Yeah.
part of it, you know.
Yeah. It's not
Um,
supposed to be
I always
easy.
think like there's that saying, like, what comes up must come down. Like, you
Yeah.
can't have all of these really, really good things and these dopamine things without having a drop off in that, you know, and challenges to
Mhm.
face off the back of
Mhm.
that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, you learn from it the more scenes that you do. And this is
Mhm.
why, you know, there are people, you know, educators in the industry that have done it time and time again. We look up to these pros because
Mhm.
they've done it all, they've gone through it. Uh,
Mhm.
and yeah, you have to face it ultimately.
Yeah,
There's no two ways
yeah.
about it. Uh,
No, no.
Especially with your first prep and going through all of that. And try and not let that deter you from doing another one. Do you know?
Yeah, yeah. I
It's
think
yeah, like you said, it's skin that you're making thicker as time
yeah,
goes on.
yeah. I think if you can resonate even a little bit with this in terms of or at least draw things that you can be more mindful of
Mhm.
throughout the prep. I'm not saying well, neither one of us are saying for a minute that you're not going to run into these things. In fact, we've told you pretty clearly that you are going to do it. You're not immune. Nobody is. But at the very least, if this episode can draw a few things that you can remind yourself of on a daily basis throughout a prep or an off season to hone in on, to
Yeah.
refocus, recenter, ground yourself, and look at the things that matter.
Mhm.
That hopefully will prevent people from falling out of a prep and be completely obliterated by it, chewed, spat back out, and never going to touch it again. Because it's sad to see these types of things like really take people because it is incredibly challenging and it's not because an athlete's weak, it's not because an athlete is less than another athlete just because they're overcome by these feelings, the impact on body image, the impact on sort of the feedback and the support system and things like that. If it's not there, you're not a weak person, you're not a bad athlete for not being able to manage these things. The pure purpose of it is to teach you and learn how to manage them to go forward. So I'm just hoping that there's something that sticks for people so that it doesn't drive them away because it's sad to see.
And I genuinely believe that if you're putting as much work into your physical, you have to put as much work into your mental. The two just go hand in
Hand
hand.
in hand.
Have to be
Yeah.
able to put as much time as you put in going to the gym,
Mm.
prepping your meals and doing all of these things has to go into a mental side of it. I know maybe therapy is not for everybody, but all of these things that we've said in this podcast, you can take on board
Yeah.
and use that, you know, practical things you can take on board, ways of thinking, listen to other podcasts, chat to other people,
Mhm.
you know, take all of that on board and spend the time thinking about it, you
Yeah.
know, about your
Yeah.
body, relationship with food, all of these things. There's certain coaches out there as well. And if you get to
Mhm.
a place where you've done all that mental work, you've exhausted, and you're like, oh no, another prep isn't for me, that's fine. Or you might
Yeah,
get to a place where you're like, all of this is going to allow me to prep better next time. Brilliant.
exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, that kind of way. But
Yeah.
get to that place first. You know,
Mhm.
don't just solely focus on the physical and then give up or think that you can do another prep as a mass thing. Like do the mental work and that will always guide you to where you're
Most Yeah. It's honestly, it can make you bulletproof. Your mind is everything when it comes to bodybuilding, when it
I
comes to
think
prep.
actually a perfect example is you and I. Like, like
A walking, talking
literally,
disasters
I
and
literally didn't
examples of
even
this
think of
going
that.
wrong.
But like the two of us,
Yeah.
guys, if you're listening, obviously we're gonna wrap
Yeah.
it up soon. But
Yeah.
Jade and I have probably spent a mortgage worth on therapy over the last few years.
Yeah.
So much work has gone into our
Yeah.
therapies. I've gotten to a point where I've realized that this is not for me anymore, and I'm confident
Yeah.
in that decision, and I know what stage will bring me, and I know what stage won't bring me, and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
Jade has done the work and she knows what stage will bring her and what it won't bring her if she was to step away. She's
Yeah.
gotten to that place. You know, I didn't just make that decision of, oh, I had an experience of never doing it again. Or
No.
Jade is using a prep as a mask. It's come from a genuine place and understanding, okay, right, I've done this mental work and I know what this
Yeah.
prep is giving me. Do you
Yeah.
know that kind of way?
Yeah.
And we're both
Exactly.
on very different paths.
Yeah. It's
You're
the
here.
clarification. I know. I want to give you a hug.
That's what it is, full circle
It
moment. It
is.
is, you know, and
It
I think
is.
people are probably like, we're both at very different ends, but it's not come
Yeah.
from a negative place. It's come from
No.
massive self-awareness on both of our sides. So
And a lot of pain, like a lot of uncomfortableness, a lot of difficulty, a lot of challenge, a lot of like mental collapse on my heart, like on my side. Like believe me, I know we covered it last year, but the difference in my ability to actually manage these things now has completely changed because I've completely adapted and sort of addressed the way that my mind was working. And I firmly believe, take bodybuilding out of it, but with this in place, I wouldn't be competing again without it.
yeah, yeah,
You have to like up top, up there for thinking, down there for dancing. That it's not going to dance without this being
yeah,
fixed, you know. So it's 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 probably one of the most unhealthiest sports going, but arguably it challenges everything.
yeah.
Not
Because
just your body, but
it's
your
great
mind.
for one person and
Yeah.
that another, and you need to, like I said, do the work to know if that it is the right thing for you to do.
Yeah. If it resonates.
Yeah,
For me, I was fortunate I came back to it because I'd learned to take it back into my life in a way that fit me and in a way that protected me and in a way that didn't exasperate negative feelings about myself, whatever context that may be. For you, Grace, you got clarity that you didn't need it in order to fill any
yeah,
kind of void or for you to feel a sense of achievement or some self-worth or happiness and like that. Your joy wasn't attached to that anymore, and therefore you don't need it. You could go back to it whenever you wanted, but the matter of the fact now is that it doesn't resonate with who you are and what you want to be. And it's two completely different
yeah,
situations, like I said. But at the end of the day, up here is the bit that needed the love and the attention and the work.
yeah.
It's
Self
funny how the coin falls, isn't it?
self-awareness, but
Mm.
you know, I think it's something that everybody needs. And
Yeah.
you know, therapy is huge,
Mhm.
and hopefully this conversation has, I suppose, sparked a few thoughts of people and
Yeah.
how they think about their bodies and their journeys. And
Yeah.
yeah, God, is I know, is there
Oh,
anything
it got
I'm
deep.
I'm a bit like I feel like I've just had a therapy session as well.
I'll be telling her that I'm not booking in this week.
You're just like, sorry, I dumped all of my thoughts on a
Nope.
podcast. Got it out. Got
Literally.
it out.
I've dumped. I'm all right. Guys, if you're still here, good on you, honestly.
Yeah, we've
But
been chatting for a while.
yeah, yeah. But
Um,
on a serious note, take care of yourselves because this is a challenging space for a lot of reasons. Take the physicalities out of it. It's challenging. It's challenging to be different. It's challenging to be um sort of going from one extreme to the other, from expecting your body and your mind to keep up with all of these things. Me and Grace laugh about it now, but we can do because we're in a place where we've addressed all of the things that have arisen for us. So you're
yeah,
not alone. You're not losing it. You're not failing. You're not struggling because you're weaker than anybody else. It is hard and it's meant to be. So if you ever need us, DMs are always open. The support is always there.
body image
will
side of things, like, and we both have
mm,
not different perspective, but we're both at different ends of
yeah,
journey, I suppose. Like, you're
yeah.
still competing, I'm not. So,
Mhm.
like, for anybody on prep that needs Jade's support, reach
Yep.
out. Anybody who's, thinking of stepping away from bodybuilding, reach out. You have my
Mhm.
support, and my perspective on things and my experiences, So,
Mhm.
if you
Yeah.
relate to any of this, like, please do not hesitate. We want to build a community, we want to help you guys, and this is a massive part of what we do as athletes. So,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
yeah, hopefully we've helped, but I don't think there's
Yeah.
anything
Fingers
else.
crossed. I don't think so, no. There was other bits and pieces, but I think the value in what we were really bothered about discussing is there. So we'll wrap
I
it
think we
up.
answered all the questions. Did get questions back. I don't know. Oh God, I don't want to leave any. I think we
Let's
answered
have a
the
look.
one on the men, how to tell them to fuck off. You don't have a don't tell them to fuck off. As I said, they're probably just intimidated by you, and
Yeah. Yeah.
they're not going to be your boyfriend anyway. Like, they're not the person that's walking you down the aisle. So whatever.
No.
And then we asked about the family thing, as we spoke about that as well, and
Yeah.
attaching your physique from your identity and stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
guys, if there's any other questions off the back of that, please just
Hit
let us
us up.
know. So share on your stories. I know it's a ramble. If you got to the end, amazing. But please share us on your stories. I thoroughly
Yeah.
enjoyed this episode. And
Mhm.
we want to make sure that our message reaches as many people as possible, not just in
Mhm.
the competing industry, but like, this podcast will help a lot of people on their journey. So please share, tag
Yeah.
us, give us your feedback, watch
Yeah.
us on YouTube, whatever it is, just show your support. Yeah, we appreciate you all who listen.
It's
So thank you for
it's
sticking
going a
with
long way.
us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Speak to you soon.
guys.